Hello everyone, welcome to the Edib channel. Today we're going to be reacting to a video called The Metaverse is About to Change Your Brain by a channel called The Visual Venture. This is the first video I've ever seen from them, which is why you see I'm not actually subscribed. But we'll see what the video is like and whether or not we should subscribe and like the video at the end. More than likely I will subscribe and like it. But yeah, I'm quite interested in the video, which is why I wanted to react for you guys today, because my entire degree was focused around internet addiction, and that's such an evolving field, and I hope to continue to study cyber psychology in the future. And the metaverse, I have a lot of strong opinions about it, and I want to see if some of these get brought up, and if not, make that conversation with you guys today. But without further ado, let's get into it.
We're going to talk about the metaverse. Privacy and safety need to be built into the metaverse from day one.
The game emulates all physical sensations.
To deliver deep...
Nice Black Mirror reference there, which is probably not what you should look to if you're trying to sell the metaverse, if I'm being honest, because a lot of their episodes would convince you that things like the metaverse not very good for you, but the Mark Zuckerberg will do his best to convince you otherwise, I'm sure of it. Also, side note, very interesting for him to talk about privacy and safety when Facebook has been found to sell your private information and gone to court over it. So I don't really respect Mark Zuckerberg's take when it comes to privacy.
Deep and immersive experiences in the metaverse. Isn't that the ultimate promise of technology? To be together with anyone? Our mission remains the same.
Okay, now I'm gonna take back my comment about Black Mirror, because this is a few too many references. Maybe you could pull some other source material for it. It just feels like you're just comparing everything to Black Mirror at this point, which is a bit cheap.
Same, it's still about bringing people together.
The metaverse is about to change your brain. What is the metaverse? The term first came about in the 1992 science fiction novel Snow Crash, where Neil Stephenson envisioned lifelike avatars who met in 3D environments. He called it the metaverse. Now,
I would say that anything that is part of an internet community, a good example would be with video games like MMOs, is actually a metaverse. Your community of people, your clan chat, your FC in WoW is the metaverse of WoW. Your clan chat in RuneScape is the metaverse of RuneScape. Facebook's coined the term metaverse now like it's something new or revolutionary, but they didn't come up with it whatsoever. What is different is that they wanted to not feel like an extension of life or a separation of who you are, like we do with these games, and we're able to disassociate very well. They wanted to feel like that is life, that you exist and your life is that, which without even having to watch anything from the video, I can tell you is damaging to people's brains and perceptions of reality, because only with the phones and the change that we've had in the past 15 to 20 years, it's already been showing a really big alteration in the perception of people of what it is to actually be alive and be part of the world. If you think that something like the metaverse is already recorded, it's not. We don't even have data right now about the effects of everyone that's grown up with iPads. That's still a very fresh generation. They're at best 15 years old, which means they've not actually become full-fledged adults for most of these children that grew up with iPads their whole life. So it's unpredictable and undeniable what making your entire worldview become the metaverse that Mark Zuckerberg would like to coin will do to us in the future. But yeah, let's continue with the video for now.
it's coming to life with virtual reality.
Although I just want to point out that I really hope this video doesn't become just a simple comparison to Black Mirror. I kind of get a bit worried seeing how many little Black Mirror references were already put in the first 53 seconds of the video. So I really hope that this doesn't just become a comparison to Black Mirror, because Black Mirror is very sensationalized and it will take away from the reality of the seriousness of the situation and make it become like, oh, it's just a TV show. It's not going to happen like the TV show, when there is factual data that we can present. I'm actually going to put it on screen right now, for example, of damages caused by technology that people don't want to talk about. One of the cases, I don't want to say favorites because it's absolutely deplorable, but one case that comes to mind every time is that of two parents that did not feed their child because they were so invested in playing Second Life. Second Life, to some of you that might not know, is a game akin to The Sims, where you're kind of, playing your character and you're literally living a second life, as the title would suggest. And they were so invested with playing their fake versions of themselves, they neglected their real life and let their own child die. So just keep that in mind, that this is just in a game about simulating your life, not something that actually will be what they want to be your life.
Reality where users live within a digital universe. The concept is nothing new. For years, video games have been giving us a taste of what Mark Zuckerberg's Metaverse would be like. The best example of this is the game's Second Life.
I signed up for Second Life about a year ago. Back then, my life was so great that I literally wanted a second one.
You create your own
Called it, by the way, just saying.
avatar, and in this virtual world, you have a second life. You can explore the world, meet other residents, and even buy and sell property. It's the ultimate escape from real life. Although its users are mainly 18 to 24-year-olds, there's another game that's attracting younger kids. I read an article from Time magazine about a futurist named Kathy Hackle. Her son was turning 9 years old, but he didn't ask for friends to come over to have a pizza party. He asked if he and his friends could hold the celebration on Roblox. On the platform,
Small side tangent, but it always amazes me how popular Roblox really is. I've always thought that Minecraft was the dominating game, and Minecraft was the most popular kids kind of game.
users can play a multitude of games, and Kathy's son's friends would attend the party as their virtual avatars. Kathy explained, just because it happens in a virtual space doesn't make it less real. It's very real to my son. This is just a glimpse of what the metaverse holds. The future is coming, but is it going to be a bright one?
This isn't about spending more time on screens. It's about making the time that we already spend better.
In the metaverse, you'll be able to experience an endless virtual world where you can do things you only once dreamed about. It supposedly will bring people together, and you'll be able to hang out with friends as...
There is one thing I will say, and that is that Facebook PR and the way that they've gone about presenting the metaverse is one of the leading reasons why the metaverse might not work. I mean, let's go back a bit. And if you see here,
It supposedly...
this looks terrible. Like these wee emojis-esque that they've made as your characters for the metaverse are terrible. It should be something hyper realistic. It should be something that resembles you. And I get it that they were starting out and they probably are aiming to get to that point. But as long as it looks like we are literally in Me Town, it's not going to have the effect that they want it to have.
It will bring people together, and you'll be able to hang out with friends as if they're right in front of you. And what used to be boring lectures from your professors will soon be hands-on and immersive. What could possibly go wrong?
Ready?
This is crazy.
Virtual reality.
Again, with all the Black Mirror references, I don't quite like it. I mean, I get the point that he's trying to put across, and Black Mirror does do a good job of making these horror scenarios out of tech, but a lot of them are exaggerated, and there are different problems, psychological problems that aren't as obvious as Black Mirror makes it to be, that could really happen.
Is a developing technology, but just like how we didn't realize cigarettes were bad for us until 1964, we don't know the long-term effects of living in a virtual world, but there's some research that might catch your attention. Out of all the points Mark Zuckerberg has emphasized, the main driver behind the metaverse is social connection.
How we actually experience the world and interact with each other. That's what the metaverse is all about.
socializing is an important aspect of human growth. One of the biggest teachers of social skills comes from playing physical games in childhood. But with modern technology evolving rapidly, kids are growing up playing more computer games than going outside. In 2010, there was a study conducted by Addict Health which compared the social skills of students addicted to computer games versus normal students who had no addiction.
I mean, I'm going to have to, again, make a point here. It feels like he's talking badly about video games, and it's been proven that video games are not as bad as they make it out to be for children. Yes, if you overuse, they are going to have a negative effect, but that's the same as anything else that they over abuse. An addiction is an addiction. An addiction is always going to be a problem. It's not inadvertently the video games themselves that are causing the problem, but allowing them to get to a point where kids are addicted to them. If a kid was extremely addicted to even a sport which is healthy, it would still have serious negative social effects for them. If your kid did nothing but play football every single day, he probably would still have social skills that are not adding up very well. Another point I want to make here is driving ultimate conclusions like this with small sample sizes. Like 564 students is not that small, but it's also not very large for a conclusion of this scale. Oh, kids playing video games makes kids worse at socializing. Well, this is just 564 students paired against another, let's say ideally 564 students. And this is, we're talking about millions of kids all over the world that engage with video games. So I hate it when studies do this kind of thing where they have relatively small sample sizes, but they make conclusions of incredibly large scale.
Students addicted to computer games versus normal students who had no addiction. 564 students were randomly selected, and the findings were significant. To put it simply, the higher the addiction to computer games, the less social skills the students had.
This is my point exactly. He says, oh, the findings were significant, but finding significance in studies is actually not that difficult. And if you look up the replicability crisis within psychology, many of these studies have been debunked because while they did have significance, it was artificial significance. They placed the study in conditions that made it so that significance would always happen, or they found significance for one effect and then just, like I said, made these outrageous big conclusions about it that just proves their point. But all that they really found here is, yes, this group of students might have had worse social skills, but it's ignoring all of the other factors in their life. What if those students, I get that they were randomly selected, which is supposed to cancel out these individual differences, but what else is happening in these students' lifestyles that makes them unable to socialize? Also, it's ignoring a lot of factors from the general environment we live in nowadays. And most people are social online. It's really, really wrong, in my opinion, to say that because someone cannot socialize in person, they have no social skills, when for all we know, someone might be able to socialize with a group of 5 to 10 people in person, but have zero online connections, whereas the person that is unable to socialize with 5 or 10 people in person could have hundreds of social connections that they maintain healthily. I am not talking about ones where they talk once or twice and that's not a social connection, but I knew many people that because of the life they live or where they live were unable to go out. Say they lived in Eastern Europe or in poverty areas, but they were able to hold great friendships online. I'm originally from Brazil, and I have plenty of friends that I made globally through playing RuneScape in Brazil, and I am not a social recluse. So I really disagree with making, like I said, ultimate conclusions out of simple results.
The metaverse is intended to bring people closer together, but isn't the same true with video games? Most games nowadays have a social aspect to them. You play as a team trying to achieve a goal, whether that be to defeat monsters in dungeons, or to be the last one out of 100 people to survive. But despite the intention, studies still show that you're isolating yourself more compared to physical interactions. Rodents that have been isolated from other rodents show dysregulated signaling in the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for socializing. It's also been studied that it would even decrease in size due to not enough social interaction. We already know the effects of video game addiction, but what if we take it a step further? What happens to your brain when you mesh virtual reality with real life?
Morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Slowly coming towards the thumb.
Modern research shows that VR affects the brain in a specific way.
Once again, similar critique. I hate when people say modern research shows this, but present no source or evidence for what they claim is happening. That is just a throwaway statement with zero validity to just say modern research shows this, because as I studied in my degree, you can find modern research that will back up whatever point you had. 20 years ago, as he actually states in this video, you could find modern research that suggested that cigarettes were good for you. You could find research that suggested that it increased your lung capacity to smoke cigarettes. Now, of course, now we can see that that's stupid and doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But at the time, if you were just going by what is just modern research shows this, and without showing the credibility and your sources and countering sources, you could just believe it. Once again, not really impressed by that statement, and I am very much against the metaverse, and yet this video is doing nothing to convince me realistically negatively about it. In fact, this video just seems to be incredibly against video games. It just feels like he just keeps driving home the points that video games and the metaverse are the same thing, which they are not inherently the same thing.
The brain. Your eyes see one object, but brain cells perceive and react to that differently. This leads to confusion of consciousness, and in some cases, it may even cause hallucinations.
You're melting. You're melting. What? Melting.
We still don't know how using VR long-term is going to change our brain, but what we do know is that it will. In the metaverse, our real life will merge with virtual reality. It's not only the future of gaming, but the future of how we live our daily lives. A person by the name of Jack Wilmot spent a week straight in virtual reality.
I'm pretty much just continuing what I normally do, working out, eating breakfast, and going to work.
He explained that his experience was extraordinary, but there was an issue that he faced. He blacked out all of his windows so there would be no separation between the physical world and the virtual world. But not seeing day or night pass had a negative impact on his psyche. It's similar to how astronauts feel in space. They have a complete disassociation of the time of day. Your circadian rhythm regulates your sleep and wake cycle and repeats every 24 hours, but in VR, there is no night or day. Jack was able to counteract this by matching the time in the real world with simulations in the virtual world. With a morning cup of coffee, he would be in a virtual field looking at a sunrise, and at night, he would quest in the moonlit world of Skyrim. After 1 week, his experience was a success. But what happens after 365 days? Would people feel the same? We are creatures that are
This isn't really a criticism or anything in the point that he's made. I think that was actually a pretty good little case study to present. But I think it's a problem when you go with extremities, like I said before, and it's not a good idea to base, is this going to have a negative effect, assuming that people use it every day, the whole day for a whole year, because that won't happen straight away. Yes, now we are very, very much connected to our phones. And even now, people's screen time is not 24 hours. It's not, obviously not because we're sleeping, but it's not, let's say, 16 hours. Your average sleep time, 8 hours a day. You would, by this argument, be on your phone for 16 hours a day. This was actually research conducted by myself. I am very much happy to put it in the comments, in the description even, to show that on average, I found that people's usage time and how much they perceive time had a difference. But one of the most interesting things that I found personally, it's not one of the findings of the study, was my estimation of how much people use their screen time to how much they actually did. And this is tracked. This isn't self-reported, so they couldn't lie to look better. was much lower. People use their phones a lot less than they thought they did, which was not what I had predicted. I had predicted the opposite. I had predicted that people would say maybe they use their phones 4 hours a day, and it turns out they use it for about 6 or 7. But what I actually found was the opposite. For many of the participants, they reported that, oh, I use my phone a lot, so I guess I use it for this much. And it turns out they didn't. So bringing it back, the point I want to make is I think you should focus down and narrow down on the actual effects that it will have as a general average user, not as someone that uses it once a year because that's irrelevant data, and not assuming that someone will use it every single day for the whole year, because that's just addiction in general. If you did anything for that long, the whole year, you would have negative effects find upon you, as I said before. And I feel like this just adds credibility to the metaverse, which I'm not trying to do, but by debunking and criticizing some of these points, I feel like I am, which is not what I expected out of this video, if I'm being honest.
Motivated by decreasing pain and increasing pleasure. In the virtual world, we would have access to unlimited amounts of immediate pleasure. Most of us wouldn't care whether it's day or night.
We already have this. We already have instant gratification within our cell phones. I don't imagine the jump would be much higher to what we already have experienced with what we already live in day to day. And I am not suggesting that we are in a healthy age at the moment, but the gratification is not something that we already don't have. We already deal with a problem of instant gratification as is.
The problem is that excessive dopamine isn't meant to be released in your brain for hours on end. When dopamine is released all day, it no longer gives us the same high, thus leaving us craving more. This is how video game addictions are formed. But metaverse addictions, I can't even imagine. We're already not meant to live the way we do. We work 40 to 60 hours a week to pay for material possessions that we don't need. We see less of our family, and we plug into technology and unplug from the real world. It's scary to think that one day we're going to have to live without our mother or father or brother or husband or wife. One day we're gonna have to walk this earth without our friends by our side. We're too focused on our screens and disregard the people around us. But here's my challenge for you. Unplug from all your devices for an hour a day and go spend time with someone in the real world. Appreciate your loved ones while you still can, because none of us are going to be here forever. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe.
I'd say also a very pop psyche, generic-y, fear-mongering ending to make it about, the reality of life. But like I said before, an addiction is an addiction regardless. Study this in great depth. And personally, I think you missed the point here by focusing too heavily on video game addictions. And I get that is the closest thing we can at the moment maybe find to the metaverse. I actually disagree, and I would think that iPad usage and social media usage is much closer to the realities of what the metaverse will do to us, not video games. Because here's my problem with it. Video games are interactive, and they have goals, and they have things that you are engaging with the video game with, and then you detach, and that's it. You don't really, for most games, live in the game just for the sake of living in the game. Nor do you need that game to do things. Social media is a better representation of that because it encompasses what humans do when we engage with each other without being face to face. It's a new phenomenon that didn't used to exist through cyberbullying and, as everyone knows, keyboard warriors, because it's given people the opportunity to take their masks off in a way and say whatever they want, be whoever they want, which they can't do in person. So to me, the bigger problem with the metaverse isn't this video game addiction part of it, because addictions are bad, as I've said quite enough in this video, as is. If you play football every single day and you do nothing but play football, you are also a recluse. The real problem, as I was saying, is not knowing the difference between real life and the virtual life, which he does address in the video. But again, he keeps switching it back to this addictive part of the metaverse, which I don't think is the main problem. The main problem, in my opinion, is not differentiating what is real and what isn't real. I think, yes, there are great benefits to being able to teach lessons and lectures online and being able to access technology that we couldn't. I am not going to tell you that there isn't a lot of benefits to being able to visualize, for example, what space looks like if we're trying to learn about space. And we can't do that feasibly without technology as this. Whereas something like the Roblox example of having a pizza party on Roblox and all of this is more on point with this problem. They didn't eat pizza at the end of the day. They didn't actually do the thing that they believed they did. They did spend time with their friends. They did socialize with their friends. That did happen. But at the end of the day, the baseline that becomes a problem is if they start telling themselves, yeah, we hung out and we ate some pizza and we chilled, when they didn't. I'm not sure if that point is getting through, but that is effectively my point. Is people, yes, they do work 40 to 60 hours. And you know what they do during those 40 and 60 hours? They can't wait to come out of it. No one of health sounding mind, obviously there are workaholics. No one is sitting at work planning on continuing work after they're done. People are able to separate their work-life balance. We've done this for a very long time. And yet it might be something that we've done problematically for a very long time. That is my point. The things that scare me about the metaverse is us not being able to detach from it. If it becomes a necessity and it becomes something where you have to be on the metaverse to work, you have to be on the metaverse to engage, then that's a real issue for me. Before finishing the video, one example of what I mean by this, and this is a very niche example, but just to encapsulate a little bit of my point, you can't realistically get a job anymore without an email address. Now that might sound silly. Almost everyone in the world has an email address, right? But what if you don't? What if you do not engage with this technology and you don't want to have an email address? Well, you're fucked. You can't subscribe to most things that the world offers nowadays. You can't get a job without one. It's something that you have to have. You cannot choose to not have it in the day-to-day life that we live in. We can choose to not use VR nowadays. Video games are not all in VR. Video games are not all addictive. Most video games are made with the intention of being played in small doses. Yes, there are very addictive video games out there, and some of them are made very predatory with the goal of getting you addicted and getting you to spend, but it's not mandatory. There is nothing in everyday, day-to-day life that forces you to engage with it. So that is my biggest gripe and problem with the metaverse, is if it becomes something that is mandatory for day-to-day life. Closing thoughts were there, and I gotta say, obviously I criticized quite a lot of this video, but I still think that it was a great video. It's very well put together. He had very good edits, and I can see how he has a good point that he's trying to say. I just think that he deviated too much into video game addiction. So I don't want you guys to think that I don't like this video. I love when people engage in this type of conversation. I think it's very important for us to engage in that type of conversation. So I would still subscribe and I would still like the video, but I would encourage you guys to make your own opinion about it and think about it and then decide. I will not just simply say, this is an amazing video, you should go and do it. Because like I said, I had quite a few criticisms about how he approached it. But that's about it from me. I hope you enjoyed. This video went longer than I thought it would, but that's because, like I said, I've had quite a few disagreements with the message that he's putting out. In fact, before we end, let's see if anyone in the comments, people quite like it. This is where I wanted to get across. This is thought-provoking. Even if he misses a few beats of what I think, and I'm not saying that I have the ultimate opinion on this, I'm just talking from where I've studied this at university, and it's something that I am deeply engraved and passionate about. The important part is it's a thought-provoking video, which I highly approve of. That's all from me today. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. It would help me a lot. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, guys.